Hello, lovely beings. JJ Rose here. Hope you all are wonderful. I wanted to take a little time and clear up a couple misconceptions that I've been hearing from the spiritual community on the different content that I've been listening to. And I really have tried to go across the board and really go all over the map and try and get little tidbits of everything that's really out there. So, one of the things that I've come across is this whole we live in a matrix. And I keep hearing this, back to from everything's like the movie The Matrix, where we're all just stuck in some goo pod and we're hooked up to like a server, all the way to everything is a simulation and kind of a whole bunch of stuff in between. So, from my perspective, from my understanding, from what I've seen and I know to be true, living in a matrix isn't that, our bodies are somewhere else or this is all a simulation. What it actually means is that life itself, we are veiled when we come to this life. We are purposely veiled, meaning we do not know everything about the other side. And even me, with as open as I am, there's things that I'm veiled from. So living in a matrix, quote unquote, to me means we just have the veil over our eyes. And as you have a spiritual awakening, you start understanding and seeing that there's things besides just the physical things here or the tangible things here and life here. There's things that are more important. And so that for me is the quote unquote matrix that we're living in. And I do understand that there were some CIA declassified files with the Monroe experiment, and that they were talking about life being a matrix. And then of course there's the famous missing page that now is unmissing, but still doesn't clarify a whole lot of what they meant. But to my understanding, the matrix is basically a part of the fact that as we exist here physically in this world, we have levels below and above us at the same time that we're existing on simultaneously. So, this is part of the reason why my name on here is JJ Rose 777. So not only is 777 supposed to be God's perfect number, but also it is to show the 7 levels below and the 77 levels above that we exist on at the exact same time as we're existing here. And this is also kind of dovetails into this whole 3D versus the 5D and this whole ascension, we're ascending. And I have to say, to be perfectly honest, I've been really saddened by some of the things that I've seen out there with this whole we're ascending to 5D. I've seen people on different groups and chat groups actually go after each other and say, well, I'm ascending to 5D and you're not. And get it to be like this whole power trip thing. First of all, no one's going anywhere. We exist on all of these levels at the same time. And there's no one stuck in the quote unquote 3D other than people who want to stay stuck there or maybe who aren't awake. And if you think of it almost like chakras, you're moving up and down on a consistent basis. So humans basically are at between level 1 and 7 at any point in time in their existence. So the 77 levels above are when you get into higher consciousness. And that's when you start moving into at levels 40 and up, you're androgynous. There's no longer male or female. There is no gender. And then once you're at the absolute top, at the 77th, your highest level that you exist at, that's when you're one with Source, Creator, God, Universe, whatever word you want to call it. So there's an old adage of as above, so below. Well, think about that when it's coming to your existence. So, and also dovetailing back into the Matrix and with this 3D, 5D thing that's been very popular and being discussed. So As you exist currently here, you have levels below you that you are existing on. Different bodies, different realizations, different knowledge. And then above you, you have 77 different levels above you as well at the same time that you're existing on. And, you know, obviously this is going to get a little bit into time and does time exist? Not in the way that we perceive it here on Earth. Time is more like a parallelogram. Everything is happening at the same time, but it's not linear. We experience it as linear here, but when you go up into the higher levels, time no longer exists. There's actually a really cool movie. I ended up finding it. It's called Alien Code, and I think it's from 2014. And there's a scene towards the end, and I don't want to give the whole movie away because it's actually a pretty good movie. But there's a scene towards the end where he's having a conversation with this being, and he's in this room and he's very confused. Why is he here? Where is he? And the being's trying to explain to him, like, here is everywhere. And he's like, well, you know, what time is it? Where am I in time? And the being said, we don't have time. We experience everything as one moment. And it kind of stuck with me because it's so hard for us to rationalize or conceptualize, because we live by time here on this planet, of being in an instance without time. Now, I personally used to, when I was very young, I would have this reoccurring quote unquote dream, but it wasn't a dream. But in it, I would basically see myself a couple years older, and I was reading this humongous book, and the book was actually bigger than I was. And behind me was basically kind of almost like clouds, like imagine like smoke or clouds. It was kind of like light though and clear, but cloudy or misty. And I would read the book, and I had this very concerned look on my face, and I would look up and I would lock eyes with myself as the observer in this dream, lock eyes with myself, and I would open my mouth to scream, and I would be jolted back, you know, awake, and I could still hear the scream echoing in my ears. And being jolted back, meaning I was coming back to this planet time, it was so disconcerting and so weird. And of course, I mean, I had this dream was reoccurring for years of my life. And finally, you know, when I was old enough and able to really understand, because I was having it when I was like 2 and 3 years old, when I was finally old enough to really understand, I understood that I was reading the book of life. And I was screaming because of some of the things that I would have to go through, as well as that the world would have to go through. But when I was in that moment of watching myself read this book of life, there was no time. Time did not exist. It was when I came back here and woke up that I would be so disoriented, because time existed all of a sudden. And it was very hard for me to be back here and readjust to the aspect of time. So, if I haven't confused you enough yet, the other issue that I personally have with this 3D versus 5D and 3D moving into 5D, I mean, I do understand that there's physics that have come out and described 3D, 4D, 5D, all the way up to 10D, or the 10th dimension, which makes sense. So if you correlate that with the different levels that you're existing on here in your human body, 7 and below, and there are people that go up higher that do exist in humanity, and not all of them know that they do. Sometimes they're doing it when they're asleep, or if they're astral projecting. There are a few who actually do know that they exist on the higher levels and can tell you what they've been doing. But again, that is more rare that I've found. But the 3D versus 5D I find interesting because there's the Hopi legend of going into the fourth world. And immediately when I started hearing this 3D into 5D, I was thinking about that and thinking, okay, was that someone misinterpreting that Hopi legend and trying to put like a physics spin on it, type of, like a science spin on it type thing. And then I was seeing all these different conversations because I love to read the comments. I like to see what people are saying to each other. And there were people saying like, well, wait, what happens to 40? Like we just skip from the third to the fifth dimension? That doesn't make sense. And then people would say, oh, the fourth dimension is just a bridge. Well, if you think about it in your body with your different chakras, your third chakra is your power center, right? And your fourth chakra is your heart center. Your fifth chakra is your throat center. So why exactly would I be so excited to jump from my power chakra to my throat chakra and just completely bypass the heart? And to be honest, the heart chakra is what we really need to work with right now in humanity. I mean, I'm taping this in 2022, but I mean, everything I'm seeing and hearing right now in the world is definitely we're in hot need of working with our heart chakra and loving each other and working with accepting and loving one another. And I know I've mentioned in some of my other episodes about, coming from a place of non-judgment and more of a place of compassion and empathy with each other so that we can really connect with each other people and understand that each of us comes in with all these different experiences and these different ways that we're looking at things and different emotional connections, different cultures that we're coming from, different backgrounds. And for me, I find all of that so curious and I want to learn about other people. And I love hearing people's backstory, not because I'm nosy, but simply because I find it so wonderful to understand how you became you. Like, what is your backstory? What led to you becoming the person you are today? And not just so that I can understand you, but more so from just like a beautiful, how different we all are. And some people have come through, extraordinary odds just to be alive, let alone to be the age that they are now. And other people have gone through very normal lives. And that even to me is curious because what's a normal life? What is that like? And just seeing how beautiful each of us are as individuals. And if we're coming from a heart center, from a place of love and a place of wanting to understand and compassion and empathy, we're going to be open to wanting to sit on the couch and talk to other people and get to know them, really getting to know them and understanding them and what makes them tick and what got them to where they are. And if they're having issues, oh, that makes total sense why they would be having issues with this, and that they've gone through. I mean, I know for even myself, it was hard even being born. My mother went through 55 hours of labor to have me, which I know would never be allowed in today's world. But I almost died twice. I was breech and then I got wrapped up in the cord. And by the grace of God, I untangled myself and, and eventually was born naturally, which, like I said, normally they would have done a cesarean, the minute all that stuff started happening. But when I was born, they weren't doing those so often. But I digress. Even for me being born, just knowing that story, how lucky I am to know what my poor mother went through even to have me, let alone what I went through as an infant before I even came out of the womb. I was fighting. So when we come from a place of love, I feel like that's getting so lost in this 3D to 5D. And maybe I just haven't heard the right person discuss it. And so if that's the case, I apologize. And if you want to, leave on here for me, someone who explains it well, in your opinion, please do. I would love to listen to it. I've tried to listen to a lot, and honestly, the majority of what I'm getting are people either trying to sell me something and or just this I'm going here and you're not type of mentality or thought process, and it's very confusing to me. Now, knowing that we exist on levels below and above all at the same time, no wonder we're tired. Like, is it no wonder that the majority of us are sitting here saying it doesn't matter how much I sleep, I'm still exhausted? Because if we have this much going on here on Earth right now on your level of existence currently, can you imagine what's happening on other levels? I mean, the levels below us must be a hot mess of crazy. And then the levels above us, they're, having to clear a path for all of us that are trying to level up in order for us just to exist simultaneously on all these different levels. So, when I come to clearing myself, I personally make sure that I'm not only clearing my body or a spirit here, I'm also clearing my levels below and my levels above. Because I don't know exactly what's going on those different levels at any given time. Sometimes I'm clued into it, sometimes I'm not. Now this kind of leads me into talking about past lives, which, listen, I get it. Past lives are fascinating. But the reality of it is that not everyone was a king or a queen or a princess. There were only so many of them, right? And to be honest, for me, in the past life regressions that I've done, the reason I've done them is because I've had an issue that's kind of like a sticking point, and I'm not able to figure out what happened in this life being that I'm in right now that would warrant me having either that issue or hang up or reaction. And so when I get to this point where I fully analyzed my life and, made sure, okay, I'm really not able to account for where this came from, sometimes I'll do a past life regression on myself, or usually it's in meditation. I ask, can I be shown what I was doing in that past life or future life, whatever, that's giving me this sticking point, and why am I stuck on this specific issue, or where did this come from, and what do I need to learn? And I've had a couple of them where, the lives were nothing special. I mean, a couple of them were pretty awful, to be honest, and very ordinary. Some of them were extraordinary. Some of them I wasn't even in a human body. Some of them I wasn't even in a body at all. I was just literally a little energy orb thingy. But I was shown that in order to heal whatever the specific issue was that I was trying to heal or overcome, that, like I said, I was getting stuck and not understanding where I would have gotten that in this lifetime. So for me, past lives are something that should really be looked at for more of like a healing circumstance. I mean, yeah, if you're curious, okay, that's fine. Everyone gets curious. I get curious about things here and there, but I don't necessarily want to waste my energy going through all of my past lives, because A, that's just a lot, as well as why. What's the function? What's the purpose? If it's not here to help me grow and evolve, then why am I wasting my time and energy looking at it? So for all of you, I mean, if you're ever in a situation where you're doing shadow work, or you're going through one of your dark nights of the souls, and you have like a sticking point, and like me, you're really unable to understand where this issue would even come from your life experience, that's when past life regressions can help. It's also a great time for you to connect with spirit and ask, what's this all about? Why am I doing this? And get some clarity on it. Now, it's always interesting to hear about your family and your family's history, not only from a point that you can understand, if there's generational trauma or things that need to be healed, but also just because it's fascinating to know, like, wow, who did I come from? And when you think about it, think how many millions of people were born and had to get together with all these weird circumstances that happened in order just to make you here today. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, and I mean, if you're going by today's anthropology standards or archaeological standards, supposedly you're going back, 15, 20, 50,000 years, depending on who they're asking and what day it is, in order to have all these different generations, that your ancestors didn't get wiped out by plague, by natural disaster, by whatever it could have been, at the time, or eaten by something, or, whatever else supposedly our ancestors went through. All these people had to stay alive and then get together and reproduce over and over and over, generation after generation, in order to make you. And, honestly, we're mainly just conscientious of the past, let's say, 700 years, right? Beyond that, we're thinking everything's kind of ancient and old, and, we're not necessarily thinking, unless, you've done your ancestry and you're able to go back that far. But it was 2 years ago when I found out that I'm a direct descendant of one of the women who was burned at the stake hung at the Salem witch trials, and then another one that was burned at the stake over in Europe during the witch trials. I didn't know that until 2 years ago. I ended up finding that out because I was watching something on the History Channel, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think I'm related to that last name, and then looked it up, and lo and behold, ended up finding this out. Never knew my whole life. But when I was young and I was in school and learned about the Salem witch trials, I remember being incensed about them and just thinking this was the most absurd and ridiculous thing, and why are we focusing on the witches, and why are we not more afraid of the people who are burning the witches? Just because supposedly these women, had some mystical power that no one could really even say what the women were having them do, and they were trusting a 12-year-old, by the way. So yeah, it was like a deep core issue back then, and it kind of stuck with me. And I know, part of that also is because I do identify as a white witch, and I sit here and think about all the wonderful history that was just blotted out by the witch trials and by the Inquisition and by the different, religious groups that decided to come through and, convert or die. And I've tried to do work on that. But like I said, it was 2 years ago that I ended up finding that information out. But it made sense when I found it out. I went, oh, well, no wonder I've always had this, anger, and just do not understand how and why people could do such horrible things together. And, honestly, for me, the worst tragedy in recorded humanity is the burning of the Library of Alexandria. And the reason I believe and feel that way is because of the vast amount of knowledge from our ancestors that was lost during those burnings. They had stuff going back, ages that we probably don't even know about. That was just lost. Medicinal cures from plants, how to treat certain things, energy work. Just all this amassed amount of information that was lost. And again, all because someone wanted it their way. And I'm trying not to get too far high on my soapbox. Apologize if it comes across like that, but there are things that I don't understand, because I'm not like that, and I don't understand the mentality, the small-mindedness of wanting things your way, of your belief system, or no way at all. That to me is so small. We all exist differently. We all come from different places, and this is why, the natives of different continents, or indigenous peoples of different continents, it is a miracle that they're still around, the ones that are, and that they were able to save their traditions and their information as much as they were. And most likely a lot of their information was lost too. I know not all of it, but a lot of it was. And thank God the ones that got away and, kept their oral traditions alive is so important, because that's information that would have been completely wiped out if it were up to the colonizers. And yet, what are we screaming about now in, the past 10 to 15 years, probably longer than that, but we're screaming about climate change and what we're doing to our planet and how we're basically poisoning it. And we're talking about how awful it is that there's this greed and it's causing people to think for the moment and not long term. People are thinking, oh, this is going to get me $50 right now, not realizing that this is going to follow generations down the road, either to have to clean it up or to have to literally adapt to a whole new way of being because you wanted the $50 right now. And that also makes me sad. Now, I'm going to completely switch a little bit here. The next thing that I've been hearing that I have seen a lot of very well-funded church groups getting behind and making actual documentaries that are actually pretty good quality about this whole aliens are demons. There are no such things as aliens. They're all demons, and they're all after your soul, and they're all there to possess you. Well, in my opinion, no. There are aliens. There has to be something other than us. First of all, we need to get over ourselves as human beings if we think there's all that there is. Secondly, God is not a space waster, and that would be a ginormous waste of space if there was nothing else other than us anywhere else. That, to me, is absurd. Now, this does bring up the whole aliens are demons and this interdimensional being, which has been coming up about the past year or two. I've been hearing a lot in different content. So yes, there are actual aliens. These are things that inhabit a physical body. They are from somewhere else, another planet. They are not humans. They are not human-like. They are from somewhere else. Then we have the aliens that we more than likely descended from. I know there's the Nordics, and then there's the Greys, and there's all sorts of different thought processes on those. I'm just going to share what I know. So yes, there are actual alien beings. They have bodies. They live on other planets. Some of them are able to get around. A lot of them are a heck of a lot more advanced than we are. Some are not. And a little bit of everything in between, right? So this Nordic race that I hear being talked about, I mean, this goes back to ancient times with the Vikings as well as the Celts. And, they were talking about them. They had a name for them. There were also things that the Aztecs and the Mayans also saw as well, and the Incas. And there were all these generations that existed before. And were they wiped out by natural disaster, or did they literally just make a spacecraft and take off for a while and leave some people here? Well, I believe a little bit of both. So when it comes to all these different varying views of the Bible and demons, what I find really, really interesting, I read a book some years ago. It was called The Way of the Shaman. It's by Michael Harner. And it was basically him in the 70s going down to different countries in Central and South America and meeting with different shamans. And in these different meetings with different shamans, finally he gets to the point where he decides he's going to take a spirit journey. And he ended up taking one of the substances that they give in order to do their special journey. And he had the shamans prep him and watch over him. And when he went to the quote-unquote other side, he was met by these dragon-like reptilian-type beings. And they told him, oh, we've been here since the earth began. And, we've created the earth and etc., down the line. So he comes out of his journey and he's talking to the shaman, and he said, this was kind of disturbing. I had this experience and this is what they told me. And the shaman started laughing and he said, ugh, they're always trying to say that. Yeah, they've been around, but no, they didn't create the world. So what I find so interesting is back in the 70s, here's this man knowing nothing about this whole alien reptilian thing at all. And he has this shamanic journey, which is a spiritual journey. And he ends up seeing these things that resemble what we today would call reptilian beings, who were in fact spirits, who were trying to say that they've been here since humanity began, and that they had kind of an icky feeling about them. Well, I find that interesting because that to me is a spirit. That is not an alien. An alien would be something that has an actual body. So this whole aliens or demons, again, I just feel like this is the church's way of glomming onto something to create more fear and panic and say like, oh, the government's going to tell you that aliens are coming down, but in reality, it's really all these demons and they're trying to snatch your soul. So you better be subservient to what we say and give your tithings and do exactly what we say so that you can live in fear versus living a life of love and a life with a relationship with spirit and with other people and not judging other people. So for me, that's how I feel about it. Yes, there are negative entities, of course. I've actually have a whole episode where I talk about different entities, good and bad. Are demons and dark entities able to shapeshift, and are they able to come to you looking like different things? Absolutely. Can they play on your fears? Of course. Whatever it is that you're scared of, or whatever is in your psyche that you're afraid of, that's what they're going to come at you as. They're not going to come to you looking like, cute little strawberry. They're going to come to you looking like whatever your image of fear or hellfire and brimstone is. And if that's, a 7-foot guy with cloven heels, fine, and horns on his head. Or if that's a reptilian entity, same. They're going to do whatever they can in order to freak you out because that's their job. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't reptilians. There could be a whole race of, beings or spirits that are reptilian-like. And that gets very convoluted and complicated. And that's something I don't think I even have time or the brain capacity in order to discuss right now. But it's not the way it's being portrayed. And it's not something that I think the average person needs to freak out that, someone is going to unzip their human flesh suit and, stand there as a 9-foot reptile. That's just not happening. And I'm very, very sad that that's getting out there in the media. I mean, the other day I was listening to some content and they were talking about, oh, you could see people's eyes. So I put it into Google and it's very clearly either A, it's the way the photograph was taken. It's from a certain angle that makes it look like that. Or B, it's clearly photoshopped. And I mean, so much photoshopped to the point that I'm like, people are actually believing this. And that's making me sad that people are believing this and it's all fear-based. And that's what drives me nuts about this, is it's all fear-based. And fear is a great way to subdue the masses. If we keep you in fear, we keep you in a lower vibration state, and therefore you're going to do whatever we say. And fear also makes people react weird. When people are in fear, they make weird, rash decisions, and they typically aren't thinking with their full thought process about whatever it is that they're doing. Sometimes people, get violent when they're afraid, or they run away, or I'm just saying fear is not the way to go. And I beg of you, if you are listening to anyone in the spiritual community that is promulgating fear or telling you to be fearful and do X, Y, and Z, or pay money, in order to be saved from something, please don't. Do it yourself. And this is why I'm taking the time out of my life to make these recordings, is because I want people doing this for themselves. I don't want to have to do it for you again and again. I mean, obviously, if there's something really horrible happening, and I get called in, obviously I'm going to help. But my goal is to leave that incident so that the person knows how to protect themselves so that it doesn't happen again. Because what's the point of getting your energy cleared or an entity cleared off of you if you're just going to go back and do the same behavior? The way that I explain it is, if you just clean the house, would you want someone going outside rolling around in the mud and then walking on in? No. So if you're going to clean the house, you need to make sure that the people are clear too. So if you're going to sage your house, for instance, you better make sure that you're clearing yourself before you clear the house. Because otherwise you just got stuff running around stuff, and that's not helping anyone. So I digress. The last part that I want to talk about was interdimensional beings. So I might have covered this a little in talking about the levels below and above that we exist on all simultaneously at the same time. And again, at the top, we are all one, and we are all connected with Creator Source, God. So when we talk about these interdimensional beings, yes, they exist in a different dimension. That's why they're able to phase in and out of ours. But they do exist. They are able to come down to ours and phase in and out in order to do whatever it is that they need to do. But they're also existing right here on top of us. And so we as humans look around and we think we are it. We are the dominant species. We have, our houses and our buildings and our freeways and our infrastructure, and we're it. We're the dominant species. I ask you to open your mind a little bit and think about this. What if you suddenly realized we're not the dominant species? In fact, we are infinitesimally small compared to everything else that is coexisting on different levels right here on this planet at the same time. So with that, have fun with that brain bender. I wish you all thank you for listening to me kind of rant a little bit. Hopefully I cleared up a little bit for you. And again, if there's any information you want to share with me on any of these things that I haven't been able to find, please put it in the comments or email it to me. I am most happy to check it out. It's just unfortunately where I've been getting my information and really trying to run the gamut on these different things like living in a matrix and aliens versus demons and reptilians and interdimensional beings and the 3D versus 5D. Unfortunately, the information that I am getting is so fear-based that I felt like I just needed to clear up some misconceptions. Thank you again for listening to me. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Make it beautiful.